Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in to Talking Books with Tanisha. I'm so excited today to be able to be joined by Diana Ma, who's an amazing storyteller. I feel like it's also a personal mentor to me as I look at the world of like writing and reading. And Diana has some really great stories that she has been able to share, and also books that she has written. And I'm really excited to talk about representation today. So Diana Ma, thank you for coming today, and thank you for being a part of this conversation.
Of course. Thank you so much for inviting me.
So let's get started. You can see in the back, I have two of your books. I know you've written probably more than this, actually, though, too. We've talked a little bit about at least one other book, right?
Yes, but these are the two books that are published, and it means so much to me that they're in your background.
Yeah, I mean, they're great covers and great stories. So tell me about why these are the books that you wrote, and why do they matter right now?
Such a good question. I wrote Eris apparently partly because when I was growing up, I read so many romances for kids. And back then it was just really Sweet Valley High. But I think I must have read them all. And I was looking for, as all teenagers do, they're looking for books to help them navigate their own relationships and their own lives and loves and family and friendship and all that sort of stuff. But when I was reading the books that were available to me, all the main characters were white, and I really wanted to see myself in those books. I wanted to see Asian Americans falling in love, having adventures, navigating friendships. But there wasn't really anything when I was growing up. So when I sat down to write my young adult book, I wanted it to be a romance. I wanted it to be fun, and I definitely wanted a Chinese American main character who was navigating those questions that I had. When your friends say, "Oh, you're not like other Asians. You're different. What do you do with that?"
Right.
And right, and kids look to books to find out they're not alone, that other people are going through the same things. So for me, Eris apparently was a love letter to young Asian American teens and to my younger self as well. And my favorite emails that I get are from Chinese American young adults who write in and say, "This book, I saw myself in it and it meant so much to me." And that's why I write it. Her Rebel Highness is also a romance, but it also is a historical novel. So it takes us to a time that isn't talked about. And I think it's a time that's not taught in schools, in history classes. And that's 1989 China, during the time of the Tiananmen Square protests. And I just remember what a huge effect that event had to be in my parents' living room. I believe I was a junior in high school at that time. And watching live the tanks roll in before the screen went black. Everything went we knew nothing about what was going on, but it was just this moment it felt like China had been on a verge of this great change and this wonderful possibility driven by young people. These were protests led by young people. And so I remember going to school the next day thinking, everyone's going to be talking about this. This is going to be a major thing, because I was so affected. Yeah. And to go to school the next day and have no one talk about it, have it not be on anyone's radar. I think one social studies teacher mentioned it, and it was this big thing for me and my family, and my community, but no one knew about it. So I started talking, as I started writing Her Rebel Highness, I asked young people, "Have you heard of the Tiananmen Square protests?" And everyone was like, "No." So I partly wrote this book to shed some light on an important time. And so these young activists weren't forgotten.
Wow. Yeah, I'm feeling, I think, pain in what you're sharing and saying, right? The pain of not having someone recognize a very significant piece in time, right? In your own current, like, your state of like being this young person waiting for someone to recognize what's happening. but then also the pain of like our, the people who are coming after us, the young ones coming after us who don't know either.
Right.
Like I applaud you for bringing that back and making it, visible for the people who did the work and the energy to fight, when many of us, couldn't, haven't, shouldn't, or feel like we didn't want to, or couldn't have, or didn't have the power to. It's funny how we kind of like lose the stories of our warriors, like
Right.
our fighters. So I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
And I
Um,
think, oh, I
no,
was just going to say,
no,
I think that's very true for the Asian American community too. The stories about us are about being, the model minority stereotype of being very passive, not being activists, not protesting, not fighting. And there are actually so many Asian American activists in our history. And it was the Tiananmen Square protest that I watched on television here in the US that inspired me into my own activism. And when I was out there, I saw other Asians and I wondered, why is our story so limited? Why is it not have the depth and the authenticity of our real lives?
right. You mentioned Sweet Valley High, and I also loved Sweet Valley High. I think I still have a lot of the books that I have, when I was growing up. But I do remember like when they had like that one token book about the Black character, right?
Mhm.
The one token book about the Asian character. I remember
Yeah.
because they were so full of stereotypes,
Right.
right? Like this is supposed to be the story that, the Asian and the Black people have. And it's funny because I don't think I really even paid as close attention to that. I realized that I was only for the first time seeing that represented in a book because
Yeah.
they never mentioned it. I mean, we always talked about was like, blonde hair and blue eyes all the time.
Right.
So to be able to bring forward a story where you can just kind of be and not have to be like this one time experience is also really exciting.
It
I
is
love
so exciting.
that. Nothing against Francine Pascal, but like I wanted to be able to see my story in multiple ways, and I wasn't able to do that.
Right.
So yeah, thank you for providing that for our future and our current readers.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course.
So speaking of, like, what are some favorite parts from your books? Are there areas that you love, like, get excited about or curious about or just want to share? Like, what are some of those areas?
Yeah, it's hard to pick out favorite parts, but I think anywhere where there's food is so much fun for me. I love talking about food, and I love talking about the excitement and the sharing of food, because for me it's so important to share food.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a lot of bonding that the characters do around food, and so much so that my editor for the second one, Her Rebel Highness, was like, there's another food date. And she's like, and didn't you have a lot of food dates in Eris apparently too? So maybe we, have a different kind of date. And I was like, all right, well, I'm not going to take out any food dates.
Right.
I guess I'll just have to add some other dates.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
What I love about stuff like that, when I'm reading my books and I'm like looking at the scenes where they're describing a really good meal, like it literally makes me take my phone out and start like, Googling, like, what does it look like? What does it taste like? Where can I get it? So I feel like it also exposes and helps shares, I think, different varieties of food to different people. And also I feel like you literally are salivating and you're part of the story even more because you're like, oh, this sounds really good.
I always love food in the books I read too.
I get so curious and really excited about it. So yeah. Okay, so thanks for sharing that. So what about you? What are you currently reading right now that you're just like, wanting to share with us? What's on your bookshelf?
I just finished reading, and I'm not sure if I would have read this normally, but it just really drew me. Grace Lee, Portrait of a Thief.
Ooh.
And I tend to just really love romances and young adult literature and fantasy and science fiction. So I get really excited about those books.
Yeah.
So more, and I do enjoy more literary books, but that's not usually what's on my plate. But I decided to read this, and it was really interesting. It shares a lot of the same themes. It's about a group of Chinese American college students who decide to steal back the art that has been stolen from China. So really good. And I think one of the comps was Ocean's 11. I
Okay.
can't remember the other comp. It was really a fun one too. And I love heist. I love heist books. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to read this. And it was good, but it wasn't that like fun, fast-paced kind of book that I'm used to, but it was a much slower book and introspective, but I really enjoyed what it said about this it really captured very well the experience of Chinese Americans who have this still this feeling of longing that is very mixed up with family and politics, but this longing for China, a country that most or many of us at least have spent very little time in, but it's alive through the stories of our parents.
Yeah. Yeah. I think about something about like that kind of home monitoring that like, was it the beacon that kind of like calls you home?
Yeah,
Right? Like I
yeah.
think that lives internally for a lot of people of color, whether immigrants or forced, enslavement, like just the idea
Mhm.
that there's this place that's calling us, and where our home can be, where our home is.
Yeah,
It's like
yeah.
a really great book, by the way, too. Like very interesting. I love the concept of it. Um, what are you writing right now? What should we be looking forward to?
I'm actually working on quite a few projects, and there's two I can actually talk about because
Okay.
they're already public. And one of them is The Unbeatable Lily Hong,
Okay.
and that is coming out in, I think it just got a release date, January 2nd, 2024. So it's coming up. I'm very excited about it. It's my debut middle grade, and that one was so much fun to write. It's about a 12-year-old girl who her family owns a Chinese school in the basement of a community center. And she's fighting to save her community center from being destroyed and therefore also her family's Chinese school. And of course, as we all know from many movies on this topic, the way to save a community center or anything like that is to hold a talent show. Of course, I'm not somehow going to save
Yeah.
your community center. And as you can imagine, it doesn't quite work out the way that she thinks it's going to, but I think it's a lot of fun getting to what she eventually realizes.
Yes, that sounds like so much fun. I'm already in. Yes.
I think that'll be fun.
Yes.
The other book I could talk about is actually also a middle grade contemporary novel, and it's through the same publisher. And that one I'm working on right now. I'm really excited about that one in terms of representation. It's about a Chinese Muslim young girl, and I also am Chinese Muslim. And I don't know, actually, I did look and I couldn't find any other middle grade novels about with a Chinese Muslim protagonist. So I think it's going to be pretty uh, pretty important, necessary to be out there, that story. And it's called Rainbow Fair. And it is about as I said, a young Chinese Muslim girl who is holding on to that identity for various reasons. And then the secret comes out, and it's not exactly a secret. She hasn't been keeping it a secret. She just hasn't been talking about it. But the fact that she is Chinese Muslim comes out,
Mhm.
and she's suddenly assigned to run the Muslim booth of her school's cultural rainbow fair.
Okay.
And that brings up all kinds of things and changes her relationship. So she has to navigate her intersexual cultural identities
Um,
and her relationships in middle grade. In
wow,
middle school, yeah.
that's a story.
It's a story.
Wow.
That one's
That,
been hard to write, I'm not going
I
to
mean, I
lie.
bet. Yeah, yeah. I think we're gonna be looking forward to these stories coming out. We're looking forward to these books. Yeah. I just want to thank you so much for taking time today to share this with us, to talk about representation, to talk about yourself, and talk about the love I can hear that you're putting into these stories. Um, that's what I feel when I read your books. And so I feel like, you know, if anyone's watching, like, please, like, think about what it means to feel the love of the author as they pour that love into their characters. Like, that's what I feel when I think about Diana Ma. So thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
Yeah. Those of you, please, out there watching, please like this, please share it, please subscribe, send it out to everyone that you know who's interested in books, people who may not be interested in books but need to be interested in books. Really, we have a big fight ahead of us right now. People are really trying to shut down our stories, and there's stories that need to be told. And so share this out. Let people know that, you know, stories are still worth being told. Representation matters. Our youth matters, and our adults matter. And the more books we put into the hands of people, the more we have a chance to learn and grow as well. So Diana, thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you.
Everybody, thanks again.